The Blue Jewel.
Chapter 5. Part 3. Gosburg. The man exclaimed with joy. Praise the gods, you are back, thanks to Kukmosin. The man hugged the Denka desperately. Gosburg froze. He did not expect such an effusive reaction from a person who normally behaved in a very serious way. Losgamer, what's going on? Gosburg asked strangely. The king, when suffering these horrible pains, so great, causes his mood to be terrible. Losgamer replied with terror and concern. Is it that bad? Yes. Losgamer confirmed. Your mood swings are sudden and so terrible that no one is safe. Seems serious. You've already ordered for mailboxes to be beheaded. Losgamer added in a panic, then looked at the door again in fear. Go. Your stomach must hurt well. Losgamer looked at the two young women for a moment with some surprise, and then looked at Gosburg in amazement. Who are these two girls who are with you? Gosburg glanced at Arian and Vanus, then smiled slightly. Some people I met during my trip to Xeres. But Gosburg and the doctor you were supposed to go and find in Xeres. Did you find it? The Denka smiled nervously at Losgamer's questions about the outcome of his mission on Xeres. Yes, I did, indeed. Losgamer breathed a sigh of relief. Good news at last in these horrible weeks. But one assailed the man at that moment, who reflected it looking anxiously at the Denka, before asking in a desperate tone of voice. Well, why isn't he here with you? Gosburg smiled again, a little nervously, and scratched the back of his right hand nervously, before giving an explanation to Losgamer. The doctor is unable to travel. He has suffered from an illness that prevents him from moving out of his city for the time being. Gosburg replied calmly to the utter astonishment of Arian, who knew the truth of the situation. Agnorak lowered his head in embarrassment. Losgamer had a look of astonishment on his face at the news of the Denka, and his face again showed nervousness. What kind of disease? How long will it take to reset? The man asked Gosburg nervously. For quite some time I believe in being completely cured. But what is the disease? A sword wound. How serious is it? Mortal. Losgamer almost fell to the ground when he heard the Denka. Mortal. He's dead. Yes, dead, an accident. Losgamer sat down on the floor and began to cry inconsolably like a little child. Arian wondered what kind of person it was that made his prime minister cry inconsolably. Gosburg approached Losgamer, who was the person who proposed the idea of fetching the doctor from Xeres, and patted him on the back to comfort him. Calm down, Losgamer, I have a solution. The tone of the Denka was very kind and hopeful. The prime minister stopped crying and stared at the Denka. You have an idea. What is it? These two ladies will take care of the king's health. Losgamer studied the young women again with some hope, but then looked at Gosburg with suspicion. And what knowledge do they have? Are they healers? Magas? Medical? Actually, I don't know. But do you have experience in these matters? Losgamer was on the verge of a heart attack. Gosburg smiled nervously again. No, I don't think so. But for the prime minister, this whole situation was beyond him. Calm, Losgamer. The Denka stared into the prime minister's eyes. You know me. When has a plan of mine gone wrong? Trust me. Gosburg tried to use all his power of conviction. Losgamer did not open his mouth, looked at the Denk for a moment, got up and ran out of the mansion to the outside while screaming hysterically. We're dead. We're all dead. The group was left alone, Arian looking suspiciously at the Denka as they knew that when Gosburg opened that door they would be risking their lives. Gosburg sat down on the floor to think about his current options. Certainly the conversation with Losgamer was not very reassuring. What are we going to do? Arian asked nervously, already a little tired of Gosburg's own doubts about his plan. The Denka stared at her and smiled mockingly, got up and with a very quick movement opened the door resolutely and confidently as if the conversation with Losgamer had never happened. Arian and Vanus looked at each other hesitantly, but in the end they decided to enter the room following the Denka, though with a much more cautious attitude than Gosburg's. Agnorak hesitated for a moment but followed the Denka after all. Sooner or later they had to see the king, it was their job. Arian didn't know what to make of this situation, she knew it was risking a lot. The king seemed very powerful and in a rather changeable mood. If he cured him of his illness he could have the means of escaping from beer. But in case of failure, he would surely end up with his head inside a basket separated from the rest of his body. With these doubts the two young women entered the room and advanced slowly. It was a very large room, immense, much larger than the other room. The walls were also covered with white marble. It had large windows that made it well lit. It overlooked a beautiful garden full of fruit trees and exotic trees. It was decorated with huge multicolored cushions on the floor and colorful, pleasant-looking rugs.